Yes, any minute now.
Driving, 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 music's blaring in my ears. Engines roaring, 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 the horizon's drawing near. Pedal to the floor, no more feet in the door. Gonna drive right out of this bitter night. I'm a constant seeker in Converse sneakers.
Welcome to Nonprofit Insider. My name is David Unger, and I'm pleased to be hosting a show with executive directors and key people of local nonprofits. I've worked in the nonprofit world myself for over 30 years. In those years, I've realized that the majority of the community does not know about the organizations that we provide critical services and benefits to our community that we sometimes take for granted. Nonprofit Insider is a chance to hear about the organizations that touch so many in our community. The opinions expressed on Nonprofit Insider are not necessarily those of WMPG, its staff and underwriters, or of USM. Today's guest is Kristen Maley. Kristen is president of the Good Shepard Food Bank. Hi, Kristen.
Hi, David. Thanks for having me.
Sure, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
So you put your little guest back in your purse? We had a first here today.
I can bring Elfie back out if he wants to join us.
What was Elfie doing here?
So Elfie was part of we have a great committee at the food bank to sometimes add a little laughter to our day, and so Elfie is the food bank elf who's staying with us through the holiday season, and he's traveling with our staff all over the state, and today he's with me on my travels, so I'm sending back pictures of what Elfie's day is all about.
And Elfie had a traumatic experience yesterday.
Yeah, he was almost run over by a forklift. It was devastating, but he's okay.
Okay. If he needs a good therapist, we can go back and see who's been on the show and bring them in. So we're going to try and get a little serious here. So Good Shepard Food Bank, tell us a little bit about it. How would you describe it?
So we're a statewide hunger relief organization, and how we best describe it is saying that we are a grocery store for the hundreds of ending hunger organizations around the state. So food pantries, homeless shelters, community meal sites, they are members of the food bank, and as members they're able to shop at our warehouses or online to get the food they need to do their work, which is feeding people in need.
So when you talk about shop, is it actually they're purchasing food from you?
They do purchase food from us. So we have two different types of food we offer. The core product that we have is our donated food. So that's what most people think of when they think of a food bank.
Right.
All the dented cans, things like that. And for that product, we charge agencies by the pound, and it ranges from free, some items are free, all the way to a maximum of 16 cents a pound. But the average price over the past year is around 5 cents a pound. So it's a great deal for our agencies. And then we also have purchased product, which is we do not get enough of some of the core non-perishable healthy items donated. And so because of that, we need to purchase them. So things like cereal, rice, pasta, canned fruits and vegetables, tuna fish is a huge one. We just don't get enough of those core staple items donated, so we purchase them at wholesale prices. We also sometimes do bulk purchasing with other food banks, and then we just charge agencies what it cost us. So it's a cost neutral program for us, and that's about 15% of the food we distribute. The rest is our donated program.
So can someone actually just come up to your office and ask for food, or do they have to go through a food pantry?
They need to go through a food pantry. So we do on our website, we have a food map right on our homepage where you can put in your zip code, and it will give you all the area emergency food providers near you. And then it has contact information, and each one runs a bit differently. So we encourage people to call and find out how they go about accessing food.
So what would you say the biggest question that the community has about you versus a food pantry?
It's oftentimes not a question because most people assume we're the same thing.
Okay.
Most people don't really know what a food bank is. And and that's okay. But but
Well, here's your opportunity.
yeah, we're essentially one step removed.
Okay.
We don't actually distribute the food directly to people in need, with the exception of a few direct distribution programs we have. The vast majority of our food moves through our network, and so that's really how I try to explain it to people: is we are a hub. We are the hub of a network of over 600 partner agencies all across our state, and we are here to make it easier for those food pantries, who mostly are run by all volunteers with very little budgets, if anything, to be able to provide food on a regular basis, because they would not have the resources to be able to source and distribute the amount of food that we're able to make available through the economies of scale of doing it at a food bank.
So people donate to the specific food pantry.
Sometimes they do. Yeah. So, and what we always tell folks is, if you want to contribute to Hungry Leaf, and you want to keep it in your own community, and we totally understand that, you can always donate directly to your community food pantry, or you can give a gift to the food bank and designate that you want it to stay, for the community in your town, and we can go and put that money directly on their account.
So you can earmark it.
We can earmark it and say this goes on the account of X community food pantry, and then they can use that to buy food. We also obviously solicit donations for the food bank as a whole, because as you can imagine, it costs a lot of money to source and distribute, over 17 million pounds of food, which is what we do each year.
Wow. So I've had the pleasure of being at your place at 8 in the morning, and I am just amazed over the number of trucks that are there, the number of volunteers.
Yeah.
So is that your busy time of day?
It is. It's an early morning business. Our trucks are usually rolling out the door before 7 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. We have a fleet of 10 refrigerated trucks that are driving throughout, mostly south of Bangor. We have 2 trucks that are based up in Bangor also. And we have... we open our doors at 7:30 a.m. and there's usually a line for agencies, mostly because a lot of agencies are coming and getting food because later that day, or perhaps early the next day, they're distributing it to their clients. So they like to get in and out early.
Wow. So how many volunteers do you utilize?
We have a lot. And we track it by hours, because some folks come in and work 3 hours and are gone. Other folks, we have some folks who work 30 hours a week, every single week for us. It's amazing. On average, it's about 1,600 volunteer hours every month, which is the equivalent of about 9 to 10 extra people. So it's a huge part of what we do. And the volunteer program really has a couple different benefits to it. The first and obvious one is it gives us free labor, so we can do more work with less resources. But it's also a great way that we can help the same people that we're serving. So we have a lot of groups, from group homes, people with developmental disabilities who otherwise would not be able to get out and do a couple hours worth of meaningful work, and they're able to come and do that at the food bank. We also work with DHHS, and we sponsor Aspire volunteers, and those are folks who volunteer their time in order to get food stamp benefits. So it serves many purposes.
So you're an integral part of the change in the welfare piece, where people have to work a little bit to get their benefits.
Yeah, and we're one of the places where you can volunteer for that.
So in a recent post-election interview, this is my new lead question here. Governor LePage made the statement that Maine nonprofits don't pay their fair share and they are takers, not givers. What are your reactions to that?
We employ over 60 people, all of whom are paying their income taxes, and we are a provider of great jobs. We were just voted one of the best places to work in the state of Maine.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we take great pride in that, and I think we are a great employer. And the reality is that at least for our specific nonprofit, and this goes for many nonprofits, we're filling the gaps that have been opened up by the lack of government funding. We talk about how food banks didn't exist 35 years ago because they weren't needed. and that was because we had a much more robust food stamp program. But as that program has just been cut again and again, hunger has emerged as a huge problem in the United States, and the response has been the emergency food program. So we are providing a huge service that otherwise would have drastic ramifications on our economy and on the health and wellness of people in Maine.
So one of the, I guess, misconceptions in the community is, well, it's better to donate canned goods and boxes of stuff to you versus cash.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that?
Well,
How was that for lead-in?
No, it's true, and it's a common question. And for, I would say, for your community food pantry, so for the food cupboards that are in your town, they need both as well. But we usually try to direct people. If you have a box of food, bring it to your local food pantry and just give it directly to them. We work at such a scale that most of our donations come from the large retailers. So give food to us, when you have 10,000 pounds of food and
Right.
you want to get that distributed equitably around the state. But for individuals, money is more helpful for us because for the food that we do purchase, as I said, we're able to purchase it at wholesale prices. So if you have $1 to give, that dollar can go so much further. If you went in and paid for $1's worth of food at retail, where we can probably buy about a factor of 4, buy that much more food at the wholesale level. And honestly, as we said, it takes a lot to run our organization. We have 3 warehouses across the state, 12 trucks, a staff of 60 people. It takes a lot for us to do our work.
So part of the donation not as just directly to food, but it's to support the overhead cost.
That's right.
Of doing this. And how many people do you think across the state are affected by the work that you do?
Well, fortunately, we just completed a hunger study, as we call it, which we do every 4 years, along with Feeding America, who we are a member of. They're the umbrella organization
Right.
of all the food banks around the country. And we learned that through our network of agencies around the state, we serve 178,000 unique individuals in Maine every year, or roughly about 14% of our population.
That's a staggering number.
It's staggering, and to me, it's shameful. This is just not the way it should be in Maine or in the United States, but it's a reality.
Well, you just gave me a tremendous lead because this is trivia time. The trivia question is every week at this time, right before our midpoint identifier. A couple weeks ago, we opened it up to callers, and I used to give the answer right after the midpoint identifier, and we had such a great response and number of calls that I'm going to try and do it a little bit, and we'll give the trivia answer at the end of the show.
Sounds good.
Okay, so I'm going to give the trivia question. If you know the answer, you can call in at 780-4909, and Deb will take your call. The first person to get it right will get one of our new WMPG t-shirts. Thank you, Dale Robin. So let's get the calls going. Now, you ready for the question?
Yes.
Okay. You're not allowed to give the answer until
Okay.
the end of the show. Out of every 6 people, how many people in Maine struggle with hunger? Out of every 6 people, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6? So let's get those calls coming in, and I want to mail that t-shirt out. This is WMPG 90.9 and 104.1 FM, community radio of Southern Maine and Eastern New Hampshire. Today we have Kristen Maley, president of the Good Shepherd Food Bank. So when we use the term affected by hunger, what does that actually mean?
It's a great question.
Thank you.
So people sometimes even wonder why we use the word food insecurity,
Right.
which is how hunger is talked about in the United States. And it's because hunger in the United States is different than hunger, say, in a third world country, where you're talking about oftentimes more of a starvation form. And fortunately, we don't have that problem for the most part here in Maine or the United States. But food insecurity has to do with not having regular access to the healthy food you need to live a healthy life. So it could be anywhere from maybe just the end of the week before that paycheck comes in. Thursday, Friday starts getting tight, or you start worrying about, we're going to skip breakfast breakfast on Friday because the paycheck doesn't come in till Friday afternoon. Or it's I receive food stamp benefits, but they run out by the third week of the month. So the last week of the month is always a time where we start skipping meals because we're not going to have enough. And it goes, or it can be at its most extreme, it's a daily basis. I'm not sure if we're going to have enough food to feed everybody at the table. So it's measured through the U.S. Census. And people are asked questions like, how often do you skip meals because you're worried about running out of resources to buy food? Or how often do you do you maybe skip yourself a meal so your child can have one? So that term insecurity is really, I think, the key term. And I think what can't be underestimated is the degree of stress that puts on a family. It's more than just the physical fact that they're going without the nourishment they need to really be a productive, healthy person, but the stress that puts on a family, on a parent, that you're constantly worrying about, can I feed my child today, is just unbelievable.
Is it possible for you to kind of tell our listeners a story of how the stress affects somebody?
Sure. One that really struck me was understanding that this stress just doesn't go away once the food is acquired. And that really hit home for me when we received a letter from a woman who works at one of our food pantries and was sharing with us that she has 2 foster children who are living with her, and they had been living with her for several months. And she went in to clean their bedrooms and found that they had been hiding food under their mattress that she had been giving them for meals. And she was so shocked because she said since the day they were in my home, they had a breakfast, a lunch, and a dinner, and all the food they want. They have access to that refrigerator any day, any time. And yet, months later, they still felt like this could go away at any time. I need to get as much as I can.
And for a parent to have that hanging over their head all the time that they can't feed their children must be...
I can't even imagine.
No.
It. Yeah.
I mean, when you think about how fortunate we are just for some of the basic stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And by having that stress, it just isn't at home. It plays out in their daily life. The kids go to school hungry. It affects their education and everything else.
Absolutely. We know that hunger is a determining factor in a child's educational performance, even when taking into account every other factor in their lives. And we hear from teachers, especially, nobody knows more about child hunger and its effect more than teachers.
Right.
And they're really what spurred us to start the backpack program, or what we call it's the weekend food program, because we were hearing from teachers that they could tell on Monday morning which children the last good meal they had was their school lunch when they left on Friday.
Why don't you describe a little bit what the backpack program is?
Sure. So the backpack program is a program where children are who rely on the school lunch program and school breakfast program when school is in session. It gives them food over the weekend, so they can be assured that they have healthy food between Friday and Monday. And it's one of our fastest growing programs, and we've now have since added a program that we call our school pantry, which is where we put a food pantry directly in a school. And what caused that was, as we did the backpack program, and it has been so successful, we were hearing children say, "Can I take some extra home for my brother?" Or can I have some so my mom can have some too? And realizing that when you have a hungry child in the house, there's
Right,
probably other
isolated.
members too.
Right.
And the school pantry allows us to serve an entire family. And the added benefit that we're hearing from schools is it's opening up a relationship of trust and communication with the families. And now they're coming into the school on a regular basis to get food. And while they're there, they can talk to the teacher, they can talk to the guidance counselor, they can hear about other resources for their family. It's been a wonderful program. And one aspect of the program that, again, I didn't think about, I'm still learning more and more about this problem every day. I was always thinking about Monday, and I said once to one of the principals at our school, I said, "So do you notice a difference now on Mondays?" And she said, "Yeah." She said, "But I notice it more on Fridays." And I said, "What do you mean?" She said, "Fridays you could see the anxiety in some of the children's faces. You have some kids who are all excited, yay, weekend.
Right.
That's the way my boys are, thankfully." She said, "But other kids, you could see that stress building because they knew they were heading to a very long weekend with no food." And she said, and we were able to get rid of that stress for them.
Wow. So In our pre-show chit-chat, we talked a little bit that you're fairly new to this position, coming from the for-profit world. What was your biggest aha moment? What was the one thing that caught you totally by surprise that you weren't expecting when you started this as the executive director?
Yeah, yeah. I think one thing was how personal people feel connected to Good Shepherd Food Bank. And that it really is a community embraced resource. And that just blew me away. I still get letters from people saying, I remember meeting Joanne for the first time, and Joanne Pike was the founder of the food bank. And we still have folks who will write in and tell stories of Joanne. We have people who will send in, I'll never forget one time getting an envelope with just a couple dollars in it and saying, thanks to you, I was able to eat at some earlier in my life, and I had some extra, so I want to share it and give back. And it's blown me away how deeply personal people feel about this organization. So it's funny when I never think of myself as, I'm in charge of the food bank. It's no, I am incredibly blessed to be the steward of this amazing organization, and my goal is I leave it in a better place than when I came.
Well, let's help you meet that goal now. Is this a tough time of year for you?
It's a busy time of year. It's busy, but it's always really challenging because as we head into the winter months, we all know, anyone who lives in Maine, winter brings the added challenge of heating our home. And we know, for example, from our hunger study, we learned that 70% of the people who we serve have to choose between buying food and heating their home in the winter months. So that's a staggering amount of people. So we definitely see the need going up this time of year.
So if someone wanted to and hopefully will make a donation, where should they make it?
They can go to feedingmaine.org, and right
Okay.
on our website you can make a donation.
Or if they want to send a check in?
They can send it to P.O. Box 1807 in Auburn, Maine. Zip code is 04211.
All right. And seriously, I've been out there several times, as I mentioned, at 8 in the morning. It's just an incredible sight to see the amount of food that goes out in helping Mainers. So we have the answer to our trivia question now. Do you know it?
It's one in six.
1 in 6 is absolutely right.
Yeah.
And we do have a winner who called in. So we will get them a T-shirt. And so next week we will have our next trivia question. We're getting ready for the next show, I guess. Do you have any questions for me?
I guess the question that honestly is as you've been interviewing all these folks, I'd love to hear, there must have been one or maybe more guests that just have really stood out and have stayed with you that gave you an aha moment.
I have to admit, this is one of them, okay? Because things that so many of us take for granted, okay? Social service agencies are one thing, because they work out there with people, but you're talking about basic needs. People cannot survive without food. That's
right.
The bottom line, okay? They could be cold, it could be 60 degrees versus 65, but unless they have the basic food to keep going, that's their existence.
That's right.
And you don't realize 1 in 6, when I was looking up that number, it's just a staggering number to me that, if you have a family in 6, you're sitting around the table, and if you think about it in the perspective of Maine, one of those people is affected by, something related to food, that they don't have enough food.
Right.
So when you talk about, it's the impact that people make on other individuals. And then the other one that really struck me, and this is kind of a personal bias, is we had the chairperson and a board member speaking up for us on the show. And basically, I asked them at the end of the show, and Speaking Up for Us is the self-advocacy group for adults with disabilities, intellectual disabilities. One of the board members turned around to me and I said, so if you had to tell our listeners one thing, what would it be? All we want is a chance. it was that kind of aha moment that I get.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I'm thinking about is bringing some participants of the program on the show, but that could be a little bit awkward at points. So, but those were my aha moments, and I've gotten to meet some great people. I've learned a lot. It's helped my consulting practice. So I can't complain about that. So, any other questions for me?
I don't think so.
Well, this is absolutely great, and good luck with your ventures, and I'm sure you
Thank
will
you.
leave it better than you found it.
I
but
hope so.
It's a tremendous operation out there. So, thank you again for coming in,
Thank you for having me.
and I look forward to possibly meeting Elfie again at some point. So next week on the show, we have Patty Kimball. Patty's the Executive Director of the Restorative Justice Institute of Maine. The music appears by courtesy of Mike Hubbard. You can find Mike's music on www.michaelhubbardmusic.com. Check out Mike's website to see where he's playing this weekend. Thanks to Deb Danger, NPI's executive engineer. You can catch Deb on Morning Street, Fridays at 6:30 a.m. If you know of a nonprofit that should be on the show, please email me at npi@davidunger.net. And past shows are archived at www.tcmgr.com. NP Insider tab.
Yeah, might leave a few friends behind, but these weights are tying me down. I can't be sure that there's something in store that will quench my furious appetite. I'm a constant.
And stay tuned for Zvukri Rusi at 1:30 with Artur.